You have been patiently listening since morning, all the intellectual discussion. Now you have to listen to a person. All of you want to be rich anyway. And you want to know how these people have become richer. So we got Mr. Narendran in the afternoon. He spoke to all of you, must have heard him. But here is the man I'm talking about. His people call him a miracle man. Miracle in the sense, he is the first generation entrepreneur who has converted his own company into $100 billion company in a shortest possible time. 100 billion. He comes from a very moderate family, like Dhirubhai Ambani also came from a very moderate family. He was also a Gujarati, and Gujarati knows the art of how reaching to the top, including our Prime Minister. So I'm talking about Mr. Gautam Adani. He has shown to the world that how can you be the fastest growing economy without making noises. You haven't heard Gautam Adani in a public speech. He believes that let his work speak for him, not his words. I have been able to persuade him to speak to all you, as in South India, because you are in Gujarat, North Indians know you, but South Indian people may be interested in talking about what is your vision for the future. What do you think? Because the subject we gave him about asserting Bharat, that is the theme of the conclave. Because he is one industrialist who has asserted himself. He is much abused also. He is criticized by everybody else. But he has been like an elephant. He walks like an elephant walks without bothering about anything else. I'm not going into the merit of the case, but I'm saying here is a man who has made himself, who has become also Asia's richest man recently. There is a competition between Gujaratis in India, one in political matters, another in industrial matters. Two Gujaratis are trying to fight with each other who is Asia's number one richest man, either Dhirubhai Ambani's son or Mr. Adani. Over to Gautam Adani to listen to him carefully what he says.
Thank you, Mr. Prabhu Chawla, for inviting me to speak at your conference. The fashion in which the New Indian Express is fulfilling the late Sri Ramnath Goenka's vision of a more assertive India is much needed and simply outstanding. Also, a very warm welcome to the distinguished guests, teachers, and of course, my dear students. I will state with no hesitations that never has it been a better time to be a student. Never has it been a better time to be an entrepreneur. And never has it been a better time to be an Indian. Given the possibilities ahead of us, the conclave theme of remaking India, asserting Bharat, is timed perfectly. While one can debate that it has taken many years for India to get to where we are, we must realize that there has been no precedence in humanity where a massive democracy of 1.4 billion people that got freedom just 75 years ago has made such strides as India has. Assertiveness comes from confidence, and as a nation, we must get better at building the confidence to celebrate our strides forward. Ultimately, the world will judge us based on how we judge ourselves. And the way we judge ourselves reflects our confidence of India's future. There can be no Atmanirbharta unless we learn to be assertive. An example of assertions still vivid in my memory is when India won NatWest Cricket Trophy 2002. The heroic knocks of the young Yuvraj Singh and Mohammad Kaif helped India clinch one of the most memorable wins in the history of world cricket. Standing at the famous Lord's Stadium balcony, the Indian captain Sourav Ganguly had taken off his jersey and dared to bare his chest at the world. No one could have imagined that Indian cricketer in the heart of white cricketing establishment would bare his brown chest in victory. But it sent a message to the watching world. This was assertiveness at its very best. What Dada, then just 30 years of age, was showcasing on the Lord's balcony was the birth of India's assertions. The birth of an India that was becoming increasingly sure, confident, and self-aware. In this context, the fact that the ThinkEDU conclave is an initiative where India is discussed by Indians is in itself a sign of our assertiveness. India now stands at the cusp of remaking itself into a global power as it finally uses its considerable weight to shift global momentum. While many, including me, will accept that much still needs to be done, we should not deny ourselves the feeling of pride for what our nation has achieved since the dawn of 15th August 1947. The remaking of India into a global force is a tribute to the dynamism and ambition of our nation's youth. While our economic progress as a nation over the last 30 years has been impressive, our rise over the next 30 years will be the far steeper. Between today and 2050, India will build the greatest demographic advantage any nation has ever had or will ever have. By then, our populations will have hit an all-time peak of 1.6 billion, with a median age still under 40. Indeed, in 2050, most students in the audience here will still be in their 40s. Our middle class will be unprecedented in scale and youth. Our consumption power will exceed that of every single nation. This power, in turn, will mean an increased opportunity and ability for India to assert itself. This is simply inevitable. While there are several examples of India's growing assertiveness on the global stage, let me talk about the one that perhaps all young people identify with the most: the digital startup phenomenon. This revolution is being led by entrepreneurs with an average age of less than 30. It is stunning that despite the economic havoc caused by the pandemic, half of India's unicorns, meaning startups valued at over $1 billion, have emerged in the last year. Analysts say there will be 50 more unicorns by the end of this year. In fact, since January 2022, India can already boast of 10 more unicorns. This explosive growth of Indian startups shows no signs of stopping for the next several years. In this context, I recently read a list compiled by a professor at a Stanford University's Business School of Founders for 500 US unicorns. Of the foreign-born founders of these unicorns, creators of wealth and jobs in the US, a staggering 90 were of Indian origin. The next highest was Israel with 52 founders. It reminded me of how Indian American kids dominate the popular National Spelling Bee Championship in the US, with over 90% of the winners over the past 25 years tracing their roots back to India. Both the Spelling Bee and Stanford professors list provide evidence of undeniable truth that in the right circumstances, Indian can and will flourish. Put the accelerated growth of unicorns in India alongside the unicorns established by the Indian diaspora in the US, and the potential for partnerships and collaborations will be a game changer. Some of these ecosystems is already building. Indian predominance in tech is but vain manifestations of the impact we are having as we assert ourselves on the global stage. The scale ahead is unprecedented. The other revolutions that will provide opportunities for our nations will be in the space of climate change and sustainability. India's track record in living up to its sustainability commitments is better than that of any other major nations. And it is the only large nation that is currently a full 9 years ahead of schedule. Several of our country's largest conglomerates have had the courage to announce significant investments in the space of sustainability and renewable energy at a scale no other nation has. In the race to avoid ecological disaster, the world will need to depend on India's leadership. In this context, the Adani Group itself has announced $70 billion of investment in the renewable energy value chain. I also expect that this climate change and sustainability space will yet again provide India opportunity to create a massive number of unicorns. Key to India realizing our potential, though, will be a fundamental transformations in how we deliver education to our children, to generate the tens of millions of jobs that will be necessary each year for India, to profit from its demographic dividend. The conventional education systems will need to be disrupted and digitized. Our revised, reimagined systems will need to equip us to become a nation of self-starter, a nation of small businesses and service providers. Digital technology will enable some of this to happen, as students will no longer be as dependent on their teachers regardless of competence to stand in front of a classroom and impart learning. Students will become partners in and co-creators to their own education, and virtual student learning spaces will replace or at least support and enlarge the classrooms of today. Learning will come to mean working on projects in virtual context with other students, independent of location at given moment. Digital technology will lead to individualized learning plans that allow students to engage interactively with content and identify their strength, ability, and passions. Growing access to smartphones, tablets, reliable internet, and electricity will mean that education in India will become democratized and less dependent on physical infrastructures. This will be of incalculable benefit to rural India, creating economic opportunity throughout the country rather than in a handful of cities. This in itself can become a massive industries with its own global unicorns. As this new assertive India takes shape before our eyes, it is astonishing how much difference a committed entrepreneur can make. At the Adani Group, we have just begun a Green Talks series to help us identify and fund social enterprises. I was blown away by our pilot event in December. The entrepreneurs we invited to speak at our headquarters in Ahmedabad were doing incredible things to improve the lives of people in isolated and economically struggling rural outposts. While one entrepreneur was developing a technology-enabled prosthetic arms, another was building robots that could clean sewers and thus eliminate the torture of manual scavenging. The entrepreneurs we met were using their business skills and tech expertise to provide healthcare in the remotest of India villages, as well as opportunities for a craft people in Dharawai, one of the Asia's largest slums, to sell their products online to a global market. All of these entrepreneurs represented the aspiration, the ability, and the heart of a new India. They embodied the assertiveness and a self-confidence we have been speaking about today. As they walk away from attractive job offers to risk everything on social conscious startups. All said and done, what I am most inspired by these days is the realization that we are now at one of the great inflection points in the history of science, where digital technology intersects with sustainability to create as yet unforeseen business models that will have near unlimited scale. India will be an entrepreneur's dreamland. We will need to compete with the rest of the world, but India has a significant advantage because it is our middle class, our youth, our digital capability, and our infrastructure needs that will drive us to both create and consume. Our response to these challenges will be the foundation of our nation's growth over the next several decades. And this growth is what will make the India story inspiring for all of us who are fortunate enough to be a part of it. In closing, I will say that as an entrepreneur, I am drawn to new ideas and new possibilities. Never in my life have I felt more excited about the future that awaits India and the potential for our nation to have a profound impact on the planet. We now believe, not just hope, that we will build an India that proudly lays claim to being a world leader, a nation second to none. My dear students, we are counting on all of you to make this vision a reality. Jai Hind.
I know, Gautam, you are speaking from Australia. Spare some time for us. Thank you very much. You have given an inspiring speech.